Please welcome back Ryûsuke Hamaguchi.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And we also have Monica Uchiyama here to help with translation. Thank you. I thought we could just start by telling people how this film came about. It's kind of an unusual process because it was this incredible score, this piece of music that was the impetus.
はい。この映画の成り立ちっていうのはやっぱり今おっしゃったように変わっていて、これはその音楽コンポーザーを務めてくれた石橋英子さんの発案で始まりました。まず彼女のライブパフォーマンス用の映像を作ってほしいっていうことを言われました。でただ自分はそういう映像を作ったことがなかったので、どういうところから始めようかということを考えたときに、彼女が本当になんていうか抽象的な映像とかそういうものじゃなくて自分の物語映画っていうものを信頼してくれているということが分かったので、その映像を作ることから始めました。
So this film had quite strange beginnings, and it started from a idea from the composer of the film, Eiko Ishibashi. She asked me to create a film to accompany her live performances, and I'd never done any kind of filmmaking like that, and so I wondered where should I start. And rather than something that would be abstract to accompany the music, she said that she trusted me and my narrative vision, and so that is how this film came about.
So this was a new piece of music that she composed, and I guess was the idea for you to respond to this piece of music, and I'm wondering what responses this music provoked in you.
実は結構複雑な過程をたどっていて2年ぐらいかかってるんですね、完成までに。で最初は、一番最初から流れるようなテーマの曲はできてはいなくて、劇中で流れる3曲ぐらいのデモができていて、でもそれは前作のドライブ・マイ・カーでも彼女に作曲をしてもらってるんですけれども、彼女の音楽性っていうものが十分現れたものだったので、こういうものに対応していけばいいんだっていうことが分かって、彼女の音楽に対応するような映像を作ろうと思いました。で結果的にできた映像に対して彼女がテーマソングを書いてくれて、でそれはとても美しくて本当に感動しました。
So it's actually quite a complex process that took about 2 years. So the kind of theme of the film that begins the film wasn't prepared in advance. She had about 3 songs that are featured in the film as demos, and she also composed the music for Drive My Car. And so I was trying to respond to kind of her general musicality and her music overall. And then after I made the film, she provided this beautiful theme song that you heard in the film.
I'm curious about how you use the music in the film too, because it's quite an unconventional use of score. I think the most noticeable effect is, I think, how abruptly you cut.
Yes.
Both image, but especially sound. And I'm wondering if you can talk about why you use the music that way.
これはですね、でも今言ったように彼女の作ってくれたテーマ曲は本当に素晴らしいものだったと思っています。で感情的にもすごく観客を高めてくれるものだというふうに思ったんですけど、ただ自分自身がその音楽によって観客の感情を高めるっていうことにあまり肯定的ではないっていうことがあって、じゃあどういう使い方をすればいいか、彼女の音楽の美しさは最大限生かしつつ、でもその音楽とべったり依存しないようなそういう映像と音楽の関係を作りたいって思った時に、こういうふうにぶっつり切るっていうやり方をすれば、ある種彼女の音楽の美しさは保ったままでもちょっと音楽と映像の距離が生まれるっていうことは思いました。で結果的にそのブツッと切ることによってそれまで高まっていた観客の聴覚みたいなものが、劇中の自然の音にも向かうんじゃないかと思ってこういう音作りにしています。
So the theme song that she wrote for us was really beautiful, and I think that it was something that would evoke a really emotional response in people. But in reality, I don't really think very positively about music as being an emotionally manipulative component of films. And so I thought about how to kind of separate the relationship between music and image to make sure that they weren't too reliant on upon one another. And so with that came the idea to cut abruptly. as a way to preserve the beauty of her music, but also create some distance between the image and the music. And in that sense, that was my way of responding to her music.
And I guess one thematic element of the film is the natural world. It is, a kind of a confrontation with nature. And I'm wondering if did that come to you from the music, or were these ideas that you were, working with before this film?
このアイディアは、自然を捉えるっていうアイディアは完全にその石橋さんの音楽から発想されました。正直2年かかったと言いましたけど、最初の1年ぐらいは本当に何をしたらいいかわからないままやっていて、一体どういう映像を作ったらいいかわからなくて、彼女の作業をしている近くに取材に行ったんです。一体どうやってこういう音楽が生まれているのかっていうことを知りたくて行ったところが、まさにこういう自然がたくさんある場所で、この自然の中のうごめきですね、なんか小さな動きみたいなものっていうのは、彼女の音楽の繊細さと、すごく響き合うものがあるような気がして、これで題材を見つけたっていうことで、まずその自然を撮るっていうことからこの音楽映画のジャーニーが始まるというか、旅が始まるという。
So the idea to film nature, create a film about nature, came from Ishibashi herself. I would call her the source of that idea. So I did say that the process was quite complicated and took about 2 years, but actually that first year was a year spent really not knowing what to do. And so in that process, I decided I would go and research how her musical process was. And so I went to where she works, and it was a place that was surrounded by nature. And I kind of understood that her music had so much to do with the kind of churning of the nature around her. And it really resonated with her music and her process. And so that's where I came with, I realized the idea of filming nature and making a music film around nature.
Is the region the one that is in the film, or is it a different part of Japan?
ほんのちょっと離れてますけれども、ほぼ彼女が住んでいる場所ですね。そこで彼女の地元の友人たちに場所を紹介してもらって、で、特に主人公たちが口にするような、自然に関する知識なんかも教わって作っていきました。
So it's not exactly the same place, but very close to where Ishibashi-san lives. And so I asked some of her hometown friends to tell us interesting places, and even some of the dialogue that you hear in the film, these facts about nature, were things that her friends would say.
I guess I'm curious where the question of evil comes into it.
Yes.
It's interesting that the title is kind of a statement. Evil does not exist. I think the film is maybe more of a question about the existence of evil. It's a definitive title, but a very, very far from definitive film.
いや、そうですね。でもこれは本当にその自然を見ていて、すごく自然、自分の中に自然と湧き起こってきた言葉というか、やっぱりその一番最初に木が流れて女の子が登場しますけれども、彼女が見てるような視線で、その先にはやっぱり悪は存在しないと思うわけですよね。その自然っていうものの中には基本的にはもちろんその地震とか、例えば津波とかそういう暴力的なことは起きるんだけれども、それは悪とは呼べない何かであるっていうことは思いました。でそれが、ある種プロジェクトのタイトルみたいになって、ただ、実際に出来上がった物語はきっと悪は存在しないってこれを見て思う人はあまりいないんじゃないかと思うんですけれども、でもその自分にとってもすごく興味深い、テンションというか緊張関係みたいなものを内容とタイトルが作ってくれていた気がするので、そのままにしています。
So of course I was looking at nature, and actually the title was kind of a naturally occurring idea. So as you see in the film, the beginning, you see the trees passing by, and you see the young girl, and in a sense it's from the girl's perspective. And I think that anyone watching that very beginning would think that evil doesn't exist in this kind of environment. Of course there are plenty of things that are violent that happen in nature, earthquakes, tsunamis, etc. But I don't think that anyone would say these things are evil. They're just naturally occurring. And so I was using this title as my project title. And I don't think that anyone watching this film would come away with this idea that evil doesn't exist. But there was a special tension happening between the title and the narrative of the film, and I decided to keep it.
I'm just wondering, given you said this is a project that originated in unconventional ways, whether the writing and the making of it felt different. I mean, I don't think it's new for your films to be surprising and to take, unexpected turns, but this film really does, I think, take. And I'm not speaking just of the ending, but I do think the film actually does shift. I think one very surprising thing for me in the film is when you introduce the glamping project and you introduce the employees of Playmode. You think that they will be dealt with in a certain way, but the film turns them into, follows them, turns them into characters. So I'm just wondering if, given all the surprises that this film takes, whether the writing was similar to how you worked on your other films.
Thank you. なんていうか、ありがとうございます。とてもでも言っていただいたことはなんかありがたいというか、自分でもどうなるかわからないような形で作っていたっていうことがまずその根本にはあると思います。リサーチをしながら一体これはどうやって一つの映画になるんだろうっていうことを自分自身も疑問に思いながらやっていたところがあったんですけど、その地元でリサーチをしているうちにまさにああいうグランピングの説明会のような出来事があったっていうことを知りました。で、本当に映画の中にあるような本当にくだらない計画っていうか、非常にずさんな計画があって、それが村人たちにコテンパンにされるっていうことがあったらしいんですけれども、その話を聞いた時になんか今まで集めた要素が全部つながっていくような気がしました。とても美しい自然があるんだけれども、自分自身が都市から来た人間であって、どこかその自然っていうものをいいように利用しているようなところっていうのがあるんですよね。なんかそういう視点でこの自然に対することができた方が自分にとっては居心地がいいというか、視点を発見したような気がして、その一つのうねりがそこから生まれることになりました。
I want to thank you for that interpretation of the film. I have to admit that I was making this film without really knowing what kind of direction it would head in, and as I was researching, I was really questioning how things would unfold. So when I went to this place and began to research, I actually came across a situation very similar to the one that you saw in the film, where a glamping project was being pitched to the people of the village, and that it was a very idiotic project that was, being just completely slammed by the people in the village. And so coming from a perspective of a person from the city actually visiting this natural place, I felt like I found a certain kind of perspective that I could relate to. These city people kind of using nature for their advantage. And so once I found that perspective, I latched onto it, feeling like I had found a kind of arc.
ただ最後の方の展開は全然フィクションですからっていう。
But of course the ending of the film is complete fiction.
Did you know the ending of the film when you started writing, or was it something that came to you?
これはリサーチをある程度した段階で、脚本が自分の中で、それも本当に自然に組み上がっていくような感じがあって、このエンディングも本当に自然に書けました。で、自分でも一体これはどういうことなんだろうなっていうことを思ったりしながら撮っていたんですけれども、その俳優の演技、これは私は基本的に俳優にああしてくれこうしてくれっていうことは感情的なことは全然言わないんですけど、彼がとてもなんか落ち着いて首を絞めている様を見て、でもこのキャラクターの中にすごく筋が通ったことなんだなっていうこともそれまでの撮影を通して理解ができたので、最終的には自分の中でもすごく筋が通ったエンディングなんじゃないかっていうことは、実は思っています。
So as I was researching, the whole arc and the ending kind of came to me very organically and naturally. But as we were in production and shooting the film, I was really thinking about, what does this mean and what does this mean for me and the narrative? But working with the actors, I'm not the type of director that tries to direct how the actor acts out their emotions. And so as I watched him kind of calmly strangle the person, I felt like it really matched the character's true nature, and it made me feel like the ending really made sense for the film.
ちょっと自分がいただいた感想で嬉しかったのが、1回目は驚い て、2回目はこうなのかなと思って、3回目に完全に理解したって言ってた人がいて、まあ自分は完全に理解はしてないかもしれないけど、3回見るとそういうことがあるらしいですっていう。
So one response I received to the film that made me really happy was someone who said, the first time I saw it, I was really shocked. And the second time, I was kind of confounded. And on the third time, I really understood. And so I feel like maybe if you see it for 3 times, you'll really get it.
We are showing it 2 more times, so. I want to ask maybe just a couple more. I feel like we have to address the cinematography in this film. It is another, I think, surprising element. It's from the opening shots of the trees to the shots in the woods to the shots in the vehicles, and then there are those shots in nature where the camera seems to be assuming the point of view of nature. So I'm just wondering if you can talk about how you worked with your DOP to figure out the visual language of the film.
これは難しい。ちなみにその撮影監督は北川義雄さんという、前にハッピーアワーという映画を一緒に撮った人なんですけれども、彼は本当にその空間を捉えることに関して独特な感覚を持っていて、今回それが十分に生かされているというふうにまず思っています。で、彼と話したことっていうのは、一つはでもこの映画にとってはやっぱりその本当に細かな動きの一つ一つが大切なんだっていうことをまず共有しました。で、その動きっていうものが一番現れるようなポジションを選ばなくてはいけないっていうことも言っていました。で、それがおそらくその車の後ろにつけたりとかカメラをつけたりっていうことにもつながっていくんですけれども、もう一つあるのはちょっとこの辺でじゃあですね、おそらくドライブ・マイ・カーとか、他の作品で、自分がその人の正面に置くショットをよく使うときに、POV ショットは何なんだっていうことを言われて、実はあまりピンとこなかったっていうのは、なんか POV だとあまり思っていないっていうことなんです。あれは誰かの視点というよりは、カメラが本当にそこにあるっていうことをいつも自分としては思っていて、自分としてはでもあらゆるところにカメラがあるっていうような感覚を多分持っているんです。例えばこういう空間でもあそこにカメラを置いたらこういうものが見えるし、こういうものが見えるっていうことを考えていて、でそのことを別に人だけの目線に置いているわけではないんだっていうことを示したくて、ああいうところに置いているような気がします。
So it's quite a complicated response or complicated idea. But so first of all, the director of photography is Yoshio Kitagawa, who previously did my film Happy Hour. And he has a very unique style in which he captures the atmosphere of things. And I think that's something that you see very clearly in this film. But when we began discussing how we would shoot this film, I told him that it was the really minute, small movements that were very important, and that he should frame the image in a way so that those small, minute movements were clearly represented. And so that might translate to something like putting the camera at the back of the car as it drives away. And I think that when we were discussing, he talked about Drive My Car and, all these shots where I would kind of have a POV perspective. And when he told me that, I thought, that doesn't really make sense to me, because I don't actually think of it as a point of view perspective of characters. I actually think of it as just the camera's perspective. It's as if cameras are placed in various places. So it's not really a human point of view, but rather like if we were just to place a camera here, then the camera would see something. And so that's kind of how I think about it.
All right, I'm just going to ask one last question. I remember when you showed us the film and we exchanged some messages about it, you told me something that has stayed with me. You said, I'm still not sure what this film is for me. And I'm wondering now, this is, 3 months later, and you've shown it in Venice where you won a big prize and you've done many interviews. And where do you stand with the film?
未だによく分かってはいないというのが正直なところですけれども、でもこれは本当に自分にとっては嬉しいことですが、この映画は本当に何度見ても飽きない映画になっていると思っています。自分も編集で本当に多分100回ぐらいは見てるとは思うんですけれども、それでも見て目が喜んでいる、耳が喜んでいるっていう感覚をとても持っています。で、そういう感覚を、観客の皆さんにも持って帰っていただけたらとても嬉しいなということは思っています。
The honest answer is I still don't really know what this film is, but something that really gives me a lot of joy is that it's a film that I don't get tired of watching. In fact, during the edit, I've probably watched the film about 100 times, but each time I feel like my eyes are happy and my ears are happy, and I really hope that the audience can also take home that feeling today.
I think that's a great place to end. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.